we've got Margaret Loftus with us. But before we start the introduction, I'd just like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're joining from across Australia and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also acknowledge the Maori people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and extend that respect to all First Nations people with us today. So we're very lucky to have Marg today. Margaret learned about the Enneagram while studying spiritual direction over 20 years ago. She now practices as a teacher, counselor, and transformational coach, guiding people towards awakening their deeper, more authentic self. Margaret established the Enneagram Learning Community in Melbourne, which met monthly until COVID. She was a professional member of the International Enneagram Association for 10 years, presenting at several international conferences. She trained as a teacher of the Enneagram in the narrative tradition with Palmer and Daniels, is certified with the Enneagram in business and accredited in integrative Enneagram solutions. Marg has also co-authored Knowing Me, Knowing Them, Understand Your Parenting Personality by Discovering the Enneagram. So without further ado, Marg, take us away.
Thanks, Robin. Do I have to press a button? Oh, there we are. Oh, well, hello everyone. A big ask to come out on a Friday night, and I apologise for not being able to be there on Wednesday night, but I didn't have a voice at all, and it's come back, and it's still a bit husky, but I think it will run the course tonight. So I'm going to be talking about type 7, which is my type. And it's been an amazing journey just to discover what makes me tick and how it all sort of unfolded over the last 20 or so years. Okay, so that's the just introducing the 7, and as those that know the Enneagram know that we're known for being optimistic and adventuresome and so on. So I'm going into a little bit of detail about how that was formed in the 7s. And I think one thing I'd like to mention is that one of my passions is learning or helping people, as I said in the intro, guiding people towards discovering their authentic nature. And we like to call it like the essential nature, the authentic self. So people over the weeks have probably described it, but this is the way I talk about the essential nature, that it's sort of beneath our roles and achievements. Our personality beneath our personality lies our essential nature. And it's the quiet, unchanging presence at the core of who we are. And it's not something we can earn or become, but something we uncover, whole, connected, compassionate, and deeply alive. So when we're no longer driven by the need to prove, protect, or perform, we begin to live from this deeper centre, a place of authenticity, freedom, and love. And I think all our types, no matter what type we are on the Enneagram, we all are aiming to reach this part of us inside that's whole. And it's always there and unchanging. So we talk about the personality developing from a young age to protect us and help us find the love and security we need. And it's an essential part of us, but as we know, we can get stuck in its unhealthy patterns and things. We need to understand how we can be aware of this that moves unconsciously in us. And I like the expression that it can be called our separate self, a performing self or a separate self. So it's separated, it's sort of separate from this core of who we are. We sort of set up a bit of a barrier. And it's not the bad self, but it's just not the true self. So good old Russ Hudson says the spirituality of the Enneagram does not divide us into good, which is our essence, and bad personality, but simply recognises that when we are identified with our personalities, we forget that there is so much more to us. And I've noticed a few people mention Richard Raw over the week, and his idea of this is the Enneagram's purpose is to help us uncover the traps that keep us from living fully and freely as our true self, so that we'll use our unique, authentic gifts for the good of others and the world. So just keeping that sort of idea in mind as we start to talk about the type 7 and where we're heading to and what prevents us from getting there. So as very young children, the type 7s believed that life was full of possibilities and that they were to be experienced freely and with concentration. And also, I'd like to add, they felt the world was happy and friendly and unrestricted. But they came to believe instead that the world can be limiting and frustrating and it causes pain. And it's necessary to avoid the frustration. A good life can be achieved by having opportunities and adventures. Now, I feel like I'm just reading what's there, which is not my normal way. I'm finding a little bit, but if anyone wants to make any comments or ask questions as we go, please feel free to. The other thing, of course, that we know about the 7s is that they are on the fear triad in the Enneagram, and I think a lot of people don't realise that the happy 7 is covering up all these fears and anxieties, and that was my experience. I remember I never thought I had an anxious bone in my body until I started to do the work and started to really recognise that underneath this bubbly, outgoing, constantly active person, I started to discover that I was anxious. And it's interesting, I think maybe perhaps other people noticed it, but I had no idea. So the basic fear of the 7 is being deprived and trapped in pain. Now, it's an interesting concept. I mean, we talk about that glibly, but as a 7, that is something I've really come to recognise. It's almost, I remember thinking for many, many years that if I felt sad or unhappy or down for a period of time, I really thought there was something wrong with me. I thought it was really wrong to be sad. It was only after talking to other people during the Enneagram that I realised that it's actually a very, very normal part of life. And some types, like the type 4s, actually quite enjoy that feeling of sadness occasionally. But for me, it was something I really, really avoided. So the basic desire is to be happy, satisfied, and to find fulfillment. And it's sort of a statement we tell ourselves is that we're okay if we get what we need and we feel unrestrained, like no limitations, and have options so that we don't feel that feeling of entrapment. Yeah, it's an embarrassing story to tell, but I know that I very seldomly will sign up for, well, I'm better now, but in the past, I wouldn't even sign up for early bird specials just in case something better came up. So I suffered the consequences of cheaper deals. Okay, so some coping strategies. Can I just ask, first of all, if there's anyone tonight that is a type 7? I meant to greet everyone and say hello. I don't know how many people are there. 1, 2, 2. Okay. Can I just ask how you're going? Are you agreeing with this stuff so far? 7? Is it?
Yes, Margaret, you're spot on.
Thank you. So please feel free to make comments as we go. Okay, so the coping strategies that we learned to protect ourselves from this feeling of limitation and pain was by creating lots of activities and things that really stimulated it and that we enjoyed, and fill up the space so that there wasn't the time to sort of be still and think, and you'd fit from one thing to another. And part of that strategy was to imagine, I mean, a lot of options and possibilities, and there's always something to look forward to. And if there wasn't something to look forward to, you'd sort of feel almost like a panic. There's nothing going to happen. There's nothing ahead, nothing to keep me happy. And then that feeling of dread would come, and that incredible feeling, I'm missing out on something. I don't even know what I'm missing out on, but I feel like I'm missing out on something. And this idea of becoming a glutton, it's really more about the glutton of the mind rather than sort of eat. I mean, that can be a part of it, I suppose. But I think for many sevens, we will say it's more about this gluttony of wanting to have more experiences, more ideas, more things to think about. And another coping strategy is using charm and humour. And I think as a little child, I know my dad used to often refer to me like I was like a bouncing ball that, I'd be hit down, but I'd bounce back up again. So there was something in my childhood I learnt that if I was happy, it was going to work far better for me than if I was sad. Now, interestingly enough, I'm an identical twin. And when I first studied this and someone said, "Oh, what type is your twin?" I naturally said, "Oh, she's type 7," without even thinking, because we were always the same in so many things. But I remember once saying to her, years after I'd been working with this, and I'd never even formally tried to type her, I just assumed she was like me. And I remember I made the statement, "Oh, we're just so scatty." And she looked at me and she said, "I'm not scatty." And that was the first insight I had that actually she isn't. I was always the scatty one, but she wasn't. I think well, I'm pretty sure she's a 4. And I remember I used to experience her always, often when we were young, she'd be crying and tearful, and I'd be the one trying to cheer her up. Okay, so it's interesting because if it comes to nurture nature, how's our personality formed? We talk about perhaps being born with a certain temperament, and those early childhood years are the things that shape our personality. We're identical twins, and yet there must have been something in our early years that was different enough for us to become different personalities. Okay, so where does our attention go? Well, we've discussed we go to multiple options, to all sorts of ideas that sort of interconnect, that we often see the connection that other people don't. I often say to my husband, "Keep up, keep up. I've got all these ideas happening." And he said, "But you were just going to do this, but I've already changed my mind because I've got a better idea over here." I can see the link, but often he can't. This idea from little chunks to the big chunks. I think for me particularly, and I think I speak for a lot of sevens, we're much more big picture people. Detail drives me demented. I find being forced to do fine detail and the similar sort of stuff does my head in a bit. I can do it. It's not that I can't, but it does cause quite a bit of frustration. I'd much rather have the big ideas and then get a team together and let them do all the fine detail, which works. I can see Claire nodding. Yeah. And of course, to imagination and action, to planning for pleasurable possibilities that I've talked about, to extremes. What can I say about that idea of everything being sort of more exciting, perhaps, than other people need? To relative values, sort of an interesting concept, this idea of relative values, that because it's really important to have this positive attitude, you can sort of change the way you view things to suit you, that can sometimes not quite be as truthful as other people may see it. I don't know if that's explaining it very well, but I'll talk a bit more about that when we come to our defense mechanism. And this idea of self-referencing, it's said that we have a little bit of narcissism attached to this type 7 personality. It's not a very nice term, but that idea that we can bring stuff quickly back to ourselves. And when you haven't done the work around this, I can look back and see that often I would very easily take centre stage and have everyone, I was gaining all the attention because I could. And even now I have a good friend who's a 7 who really hasn't got much self-awareness. And you can see we're in a group of people and you can see this sort of finish what you're saying because I want to get back onto me. It's very, very clear. So in a way, I think that's the sort of self-referencing we're talking about. Okay. Hang on, I can't move to the next slide. Why can't I move to the next slide?
There's little controls on the left-hand side of the slide. If you can click on it,
Yes.
there's a little arrow.
It's because all the people are there. That's why they're covering it. There we go. Okay, so I'd like to put the positive thrust on it because I don't want to be all negative, of course. So they're great because optimistic and with it a bit of charm. Free-spirited. I think for me, that's where I feel I relate to the most, this free spirit. Joyous adventurers, multi-talented. Sadly, I sort of say I'm a jack of many trades, but I'm not really a master of one. I'd love to be a really talented piano player, some really a skill that I've really honed because I've kept at it for my life. But no, but I think I can do a lot of things well enough. We've talked about being visionary thinkers with wide-ranging interests, responsive, spontaneous, and energetic. We do have a lot of energy, I think. Well, I don't. I haven't had it this week, but normally I feel like I've got energy. Generous and try to make the world a better place. And I think that's something that people that don't know 7s fail to see is that deep desire to have some sort of positive impact on the world. We talk about being self-referencing and all the rest of it, but I think particularly if 7s have become more aware of themselves, there's this really deep desire to do something to make a difference. I know that's been a big, strong driver in me for most of my life, really. Okay, so we haven't got very many people here tonight, but so we won't break off into groups. But I just wondered whether we could have a little discussion about what you would appreciate what do you appreciate about this type, and when could you access the strength of type 7 in your life? If anyone would like to make a comment.
I can do that.
Thanks, Andre.
I have a type 7 daughter who is a stunning contrast with a type 9 mother. And she brings initiative and energy, and she like lights up the house when she comes in. So the vibrancy is what I cherish, and the initiative, like she's like a cracker. Like she just and sometimes 9s need a cracker, so she's quite good at that initiating energy. I kind of envy that a lot. And and I've learned a little bit that, I think it's a real quality that I'm probably quite low on. So I've always been able to see the beauty of that the lovely, it's like a life force energy that feels really precious to be around. Yeah.
Thanks, Andre. So you feel like you get impacted by that positive energy?
Yeah. Definitely.
Both negatively and positively.
She can exhaust me sometimes, but she's amazing.
Yeah. Thanks, Andre. Yeah. Anyone else? So no one wants to be like a 7.
I can jump in.
Thanks, Robin.
I actually find this is my experience with 7s, but I find that the way they talk, it's quite generative. You know, you don't know where the conversation is going to go. It's almost like you find out as you go, and it creates something. It's different to being told, to having something explained to you, or you know, it's actually sort of bubbles, and it helps to bring something out in me too. So I really enjoy talking with 7s.
Mm. So can you follow? Can you follow?
Well, I don't know if it's because I'm a 5. I don't know if it's my line to 7.
Yeah.
I bubble along with it, and I just really appreciate the energy and the enthusiasm. Kind of, it's almost like I get taken along for the ride. It's just
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks, Robin. Did Kate have her hand up?
Hey, Mark. Yeah.
Hey, Kate.
Hi. I love 7s and I love the 7 energy. And when I was first typing or trying to work out my type, 7 was then high and still is very high on my scoring. And, you know, the amount of times I've lost my keys or I've overscheduled myself, overbooked myself, or, you know, said yes too many times to all the fun things. I used to wear a t-shirt that said, "Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm." I feel like that was
That's a type 7 t-shirt.
that's an ode to 7.
Yeah.
In the end, one of the reasons, you know, and as I've gotten to know myself, my 8-ishness has come out even more and more. But what's come out for me, I think the thing that differentiated me from 7 more than anything was the association with pain, or being trapped in pain or being deprived. And I just don't have any real connection to that. I'm sure I do in some ways, but for me, the 8 being harmed just, you know, was that real feeling. So the 7 energy, though, I love, and that sense of freedom and connection is what I crave as well.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Mark.
And Jeanette?
Oh, hi, Marg. I
Hi,
am a
Jeanette.
7.
Yes.
But just wanted to, first of all, just go back to Robin's comments before in relation to, following a conversation. Well, the way I would describe it sometimes is it's like, when you said it was like reading a book and going along with the story. Well, we call that a choose your own adventure book. That's the 7 version of it. We choose your own adventure. So it could go here, it could go there. There are many options, there are many pathways, and it's all open to the present time or the very moment. And when something pops up, off it goes again, and it'll go in a very different pathway to how it may have started. That's the conversation due to the extreme tangenting. And that takes a lot of effort to bring that back in and to slow down and to really be mindful and present to other people, because the mind, being that apparatus that is our real space that we sit in, it's our center, it becomes the playground, and you have to sometimes hone that playground, put some barriers around it, some bumper rails around it, bring yourself back in and settle yourself down for the conversation at hand with others. And, I know Marg said her husband, she said to him, keep up. But that person's probably saying, slow down, slow down.
Oh, definitely. Well, I'm back there and you're 7 steps ahead. Thanks. We talk a bit more about the talking style in a moment. So thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So here are some challenges. I know I'm repeating a lot of the points, but it sort of gives you an insight into some of these stresses that we hold. So that people or situations that put constraints or limits on them. And that's sort of a bit of a relationship also to that feeling we have towards authority. You sort of don't feel like you want to be told what to do. And so that real sense of not being able to get out of even a commitment. Sometimes there's a bit of commitment phobia for sevens, because that to them feels like a constraint sometimes. So, and that which is losing their freedom to do what they want. And this idea of fear of being engulfed by pain or anxiety. I know when I was first hearing about this, I think I was doing a workshop with Ginger Lapid-Bodger, if anyone knows her, and I sort of said, but I feel pain deeply. And she just looked at me and said, yes, but you don't stay with it. And I thought, perhaps that is the difference, because, as I said, my strategy has always been if I felt pain and it was really bad, I would do everything in my power to get out of that feeling. And I've learned over the years that actually we need to stay with those feelings of pain and allow that to do its work in us before we can hope to find a sort of a truer peace and happiness. And also the denial of fear. It was interesting last night. Who was it last night? Or I was listening to one workshop earlier in the week, a presentation where someone was talking about perimenopause, and I thought, now that is very interesting, because I know that was about the time when the anxiety really hit me. A time, was it you, Claire, that said that? Yeah, that's right. Because it took me absolutely by surprise, and I don't think I'd really realised that I was anxious until that time in my life, and it was absolutely overwhelming, because I was always very brave and daring and travel the world and all that sort of stuff, but this really hit me. So it would be an interesting thing to pursue that I don't think within the Enneagram world. And the other thing, a challenge, is other people who are stuck in unhappiness or depression. The tendency is to always want to cheer people up. Now, I'm talking very generically here. I think the people that have worked with the Enneagram for many years, I mean, my work is around listening to people. So I think over the years I've honed that intolerance of other people's places of sadness, and I'm able to sit and listen quite deeply to people. But generally, in the past, I think it made me very uncomfortable to see someone else in pain, because I thought, but why can't you just cheer up? It's not that bad, you know. And of course, I still am a bit of a FOMO, fear of missing out. If there's something happening and you're not included, or you can't make it, or something. I felt a bit of a FOMO this week with the launch, because I was so crook. I couldn't manage to make a lot of it, and over the weekend it was my husband's big birthday, and we had big celebrations, and I couldn't even make it for the launch. But anyway, so there was a real fear of missing out, for sure. Just an immediate example. Okay. So difficulties, which I think you alluded to before, it's becoming overloaded from trying to keep excitement high and life upbeat. That sense that you've got to do it all, you've got to have it all, and if you feel you're missing out, you just even try harder, and you can become exhausted. Once we said missing out, and also this idea of a loss of purpose when you don't feel like you're doing anything meaningful. Then the anxiety and even a depression can come. Well, that's from doing too many things, but even an anxiety around not feeling like you have a purpose. I think that's quite innate in a 7. Would you say that, Claire? Would you agree? And who else was the other 7? I can't see the other 7 there. It's Jeanette. Would you agree with that, Jeanette? And that sense of feeling like there needs to be some sort of meaning and purpose to life. Just say yes or no.
Yeah, it's that feeling that oh, this isn't it, because you haven't sat with it for long enough. So you move on to the next thing, or I moved on to the next. I felt like it was a lack of purpose. But in fact, it was there all the time, but I just need to be more present with it.
I think for me, when I have that sense that there's no purpose, or I've lost purpose, or I've lost my place and don't belong in particular, there's this deep emptiness. It just comes over me. I feel so empty inside, and then I question, well, what am I doing? Where am I at? What value and meaning can I bring? Nothing. And it's that sense of emptiness and worthlessness before I can regenerate myself and come back.
Yeah. I talk a little bit about this empty feeling, and that's certainly that feeling, which we'll talk about in a minute. Thanks for bringing that up. So just difficulty, how other people experience a 7. So difficulties for other people is, as we talked about before, the preoccupation with themselves can be. This is, as I said, this is before we've become more self-aware. This is the natural tendencies of a younger 7. They could appear superior. And I think this unreliability and not making or keeping commitments, it's all tied up to that feeling of if something better comes up, they'll jump at that rather than stick with the commitment. And trivializing others' pain or conflict, because you cannot understand why someone is so upset about something that you could actually see it in a different light. And we'll talk about the way 7s do that in a moment. Okay, so just a couple of minutes on this. So what do you think, it's mainly for people that aren't 7s, this question. What do you need to understand about this type's most motivation in order to have more compassion when your buttons are pushed? We don't have any 1s, do we? Because 7s and 1s and 7s can clash a bit. No 1s? Okay. Anyone have a thought? No?
I think Anne-Marie has a hand up.
I can't see the whole thing. Sorry, Anne-Marie. Yes, Anne-Marie. Your audio's off, Anne-Marie. We had this last night. Anne-Marie, your audio's not on. If you want to have a think, does anyone else, while Anne-Marie's having a look, does anyone else?
Hello, it's Clem here.
Yeah, hi there.
Yeah, so I've had to be careful with the 7s regarding not to expect them to work the way that I work. I'm a type 6 and you know,
detail orientated.
Yeah. So I know that, well, I can't rely on them to be always there, that type of thing. Yeah. And they'll be so much quicker than me. So I've got to be aware of that as well. Yeah.
So do you think you feel, understanding what we've been talking about, do you think you feel a little bit more compassion to why 7s are like they are?
Yes. Yeah, I have an understanding of them, so I realise that we're all different, so we've just got to go with them. I mean, we can't judge them.
No.
We've just got to make the best that we can of each type.
Okay, thanks, Clem. How did you go, Anne-Marie?
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, can now. Yep.
Oh, lovely. Well, the Enneagram, I really believe, has saved me in a lot of ways because in our family, having a 7 son and me, I was a 6 and my husband a 1. And, there was a lot of clashes. And, I was always trying to keep everybody, I guess, the peace, but I was also adding to the problem as well. Like we were all at loggerheads, but it's been very, very helpful to learn all this over the years because we've all appreciate each other much more and value it. And you just don't put the expectations on each other that you used to.
But it's given you a bit more compassion about your type 7 son.
Yes, it has. Certainly has, And I'm actually seeing the benefit because really that's my my weakest wing. And I am grateful to like have that wing that needs to be help me to fly, in other words.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. We were talking about the speaking style before, and I guess it's sort of sometimes helpful to see that, there's this personal storytelling style, which it can be very entertaining and keep people absorbed. They also focus on the positive and ignore negative just to keep things upbeat. So it's always fast-paced and exuberant. You've probably noticed that 7s usually talk fairly quickly. I know that's something I have to watch, especially when I'm doing things like a presentation. I can be very mindful. I have to talk a bit slower. Got to find the arrow. Okay. Okay, so I'm being a little bit sort of technical with the Enneagram tonight, just because going into some of the complexities of the Type 7. But you may know that the defence mechanism of a 7 is rationalisation or reframing, and it means to reframe a painful or negative experience and circumstances in a positive way. So it involves identifying the negative and distressing thoughts and shifting them intentionally to improve that emotional well-being and problem solving. And I also think this is where the honesty, I was saying about the values sometimes I think we can reframe something to suit ourselves. Now, I'll give you I hate to disclose this about myself, but I remember it was a very classic example of a reframe I did. I remember I was at a supermarket, this is many, many years ago, but and I'd got the supermarket back to the car, and I noticed that there was something under a bag that I hadn't paid for, and I was quite a long way from the supermarket, and I thought, oh, darn it. In my reframing way, I thought, well, you know what? The supermarkets make a lot of money out of me. I'm not going to take it back and pay for it. And that was my way of rationalising a theft, really, so that I didn't feel bad about nicking something. And it was a very unintentional thing. I didn't mean to do it, but I thought that is a typical way that I think a 7 can work, reframe it to make it look more positive, to suit themselves. Okay. And this is from our book that we wrote. I thought it was just a little classic. I didn't make the team, and Mum reframes it. We'll have more time for so much other stuff. Good way of cheering up your son. That's a bit of a reframe there. So they use rationalisation and reframing to escape limitations, to reduce negatives by giving them a new meaning, and to shift painful feelings rather than feel them. And I think that's the key there, to shift the painful feelings rather than feel them, so place them somewhere else. We won't go for too long here, but that sense of reframing can be a helpful practice. Often when we're counselling people, we talk about a really painful incident, and is there any way we can actually reframe that story or narrative into something more positive and helpful to help people move away from the negative feelings that they're associating with that story? So it is a really helpful technique that we can encourage. However, what can you see as the problem if this technique's overused? Anyone got any thoughts on that? Sorry.
We get a disconnect from reality, don't we? We kind of are avoiding the truth about what's actually happened there. And if in that context, it might be the other person's feelings about that actually it sucks and they're not happy and that's their experience. So if we do it too automatically, we diminish that experience.
Yeah. I think sorry?
I was just going to say, if you continue reframing, you can bypass the opportunity to actually solve the problem.
Yep, absolutely. You keep shifting it so you don't have to deal with it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the passion, that's the other word, like a classic Enneagram term, the passion is gluttony. And, I think I said before, it's not so much the eating gluttony about food. I think for the 7, being the head centre, it's much more about that gluttony of the mind and experiences. And someone mentioned before, it's that sense of emptiness that we feel, that we're constantly trying to fill up. And that's where the pain is, I think, in the 7, this incredible sense of emptiness. And that's a really deep pain. And once you get in touch with it, you realise how deep and vast it is within. So that's the reason the 7s are continually trying to fill this sense of emptiness up. And I like the expression, it's the starving heart. And that restlessness and agitation and impatience that can be seen is that energy around that desperation not to experience the pain of the starving heart, that emptiness. So the heart is satisfied, and therefore, the sobriety, that's called the sobriety. So it's not about drinking sobriety. It's more about this sense of feeling satisfied and settled. And being in touch with the present moment and who you are in the present moment. When we go back to that essential nature, who we are when we're settled, we're not spinning out with all the ideas and the activities and the jolts of excitement and interests, but that idea to be able to be focused on the moment and what's right there in front of us, and that helps us experience a fuller life, because the experience are experienced at a much deeper level than flitting from one thing to another to keep the upbeat feeling of excitement and happiness. It's a false happiness, obviously, but that's what we think we're wanting. That's what we think we're achieving when we keep so upbeat and happy, whereas it's not the true happiness that comes from that deeper place. And coming home to that, it feels like coming home. I heard this lovely way of expressing this idea of coming home to yourself. So when you're out really in your personality, it's like a rubber band that's being stretched, and we're living in this sort of state of sort of stretch, and it's not a natural feeling. But when you release the elastic band, it's like coming back to the natural state. And that's what I think it's like when you come home to that deeper part of ourselves. It does feel like coming home. It's a much more peaceful and real feeling than what we do when we're stuck in some of these patterns. And for the 7, it's all the upbeat stuff. Now I'm going to play a song Some of you may have heard it. I was at the IEA conference quite a few years ago in San Francisco, and this group, Sleeping at Last, launched a song for every type. So I thought I'd play this and see what you think, and then have a bit of feedback about it, especially from the sevens. I don't know if they've heard it. Okay. Can we hear it? How nice it be. We try it. I'm serious. Let's make a just begin. What about danger? So what about it? Let's climb this mountain before we cross that bridge. Down yourself. I want to be smile. Lost farewell tears. Oh, welcome home. Secret handshake between me and my one. I'll find you burning no matter. Let me tell you now, the secret of a tree. It feels like sinking when I'm standing in one place. So I look to the future and I book another flight. When everything feels heavy, I'm like a traveler. But I wanna be here, truly be. To watch the ones that I love, and I'll make the love you. So very seasons too. I feel hope deep in my bones. Tomorrow will be beautiful. Yeah. No, don't want to do that again. Okay. Oh, so I remember when I first heard that, I don't know, I just burst into tears. I just thought it hit the nail on the head. So how did it affect, particularly Jeanette and who's our other seven? Jeanette and Claire.
Well, I've heard that song before, but
Yep.
hearing it now, like I haven't heard it for quite a few years actually. So hearing it now, it was lovely, and apart from incredible resonance, by the end of it, I'm feeling a little teary as well. So it certainly has hit home, and I might even play it again tonight.
Thanks, Jeanette. Okay. 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 Now it's nearly 8:30. What do you think? I've got some more stuff, but how's everyone feeling? A bit tired? Andre, what do you think? It's gone.
Up to you, Margaret. If you've got something you want to finish with.
Well, it's just not really. I just won't. You do 7. Oh, just quickly, we'll do the challenges for growth. We talked about that we need to notice when we become overly busy with activities or future planning. It can be a way of avoiding something negative. Need to observe the impulses rather than acting on them. So the reactive versus the responsive self. Working on one thing at a time and finish what you start. I know we didn't talk about that, but that is a tendency to just start very enthusiastically with something, but not really stick at the details. It gets all a bit too boring. And realise that pain, suffering and loss and limitations make up the full spectrum of life. And I think that's something someone said to me once, just experiencing the happy, you're only experiencing half your life. And that's been a real learning for me. So just following on from that, we need to value the truth above pleasure and find the goodness in the present and feel grateful and satiated and become more person-orientated than experience-orientated and learn to focus through completing tasks one at a time. And then for those that are interested, just read that. It's the idea of learning to be grounding. This is where I was going to go through arrows and things, but as we know, the 7th movement for integration and health is towards the 5. And the 5s like to take themselves apart and, just become just more present with themselves. And as a younger person, I hated being on my own. I would do everything I could to always have people around me and all the rest of it. But as I've got older, I can't survive without that time of being alone and realising that if I don't have that time of grounding myself and having, just away from busyness and crowds, that I bounce very quickly up into the head and into the activity and the ideas. So that sense of bringing myself sort of to the ground more is a very important movement for me. It's interesting that the 5 is actually, the 5 and the 7 are both in the head centre, and we also go to the 1 in the gut centre, but we actually don't go to the heart centre. And I'm just wondering, that starving heart, whether that's related. Don't know. It's interesting. But that movement to the 5 is a really important movement, I think. Oh, I just put up a few well-known personalities that we don't know for sure, as you know, but from what they appear to be. I think it's an interesting one. Okay. And that's just at a glance a summary for those that would like to read it. But I think that's probably enough for a Friday night, everyone. And thank you all for showing up. It was appreciate you making the effort. And I hope you have gleaned a little bit more insight into a 7. Maybe discovered something you didn't quite know about us. Is there anyone that wants to quickly ask a question or anything before we go?
might just jump in while people are contemplating that possibility. And thank you, Marg, for taking us through this. It's been it's lovely hearing about a 7 from a 7 perspective, and even just your flow and lilt through the presentation was really nice for me to hear. That song was really beautiful, so I'm going to take that with me.
Thank you.
So yeah, just opening it up if anyone has any questions before we wrap up today.
Okay.
We've got lots of appreciation in the chat too.
I couldn't see the chat the whole time. I must have set up my screen incorrectly. I couldn't see any chat, so that's okay. Maybe I can have a look later.
Thank you everyone for coming in today, and thank you very much, Marg, for giving us this 7 talk.
Thanks, Robin. Okay. Night, everyone. Have a good, restful and lovely weekend.
Thank you, Marg. Loved it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marg. Don't forget, everyone, we've got our Russ Hudson in the morning.
Yes, I'll be there.
And what's the other, 7:30 in the morning?
We've got
Qigong.
Kathy,
Kathy Yankowski. Yeah.
At 7:30 for our keen early risers.
Oh.
And then Russ is 9 o'clock. Kate, do you want to mention just how people get access to the Russ Hudson one?
Yeah, great. So if you remember, you would have received your email today with the link and the password. So we're very appreciative for you to hold that close to your hearts and minds as we commit that to people who've committed to us in the way of membership. Please share it around. Membership, that is the link. Share with your family and friends. We're getting there, guys. We've got quite a few members now, and it's starting to get exciting. There's real momentum happening. But we'd like to just get a few more members. So please invite family and friends to be part of it tomorrow.
And if people are interested, we might have a little bit of a opportunity at the end for members to give us some feedback about what they'd like us to focus on in the first for 12 months. So there'll be a bit of an open conversation for people to tell us what's important to them and where we should put our attention in the next few months. So we'd love to hear from you. Good night all.